Today is March 8th, 2014. This is episode 90. This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is a new field of study. Consult your local futurist, lawyer, broker, investment advisor, and bank before making any investment decisions for yourself. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today we're back in the flow. Ever want to change that one little annoying thing about Bitcoin without having to start your own altcoin? Jonathan Mohan caught up with Matt Corallo, an enthusiast who took his very own Bitcoin improvement proposal from ideation to integration. Now you can follow his lead for the good of the land. Then, Namecoin was a good start, but Stephanie's got a line on an active crowdfunding campaign that aims to put the privacy back in domain names with a plugin designed for your browser. We end today's show with Michael and Jeremy from freespeechme.org. But first, in the wake of Gox, everyone should know what a hot wallet is. One whose funds are easily usable, but conversely, much more easily stolen should you be targeted. Scary Bitcoin no do-overs here reality aside, hot wallets are a necessary tool for daily use. And today, Laf and Lamar join us to kick off episode 90 with their Fiva wallet. Incidentally, if you'd like to send any tips via the Fiva CoinD system, simply direct donations to username LTB. On a related note, we're nearing the launch of LTB Coin. If you want to learn more and be part of the pre-launch community distribution, you can get involved over at ltbcoin.com. Enjoy the show. Lamar Wilson and Leif Taylor are founders of Love Will LLC and the Cycle of Goodness Cooperative out of Lexington, Kentucky. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Hey, what's going on, Adam?
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely. You guys have a couple of projects, but the one that we're here to talk about today is a wallet application that has some kind of unique features. Can you tell me a little bit about Fiva?
We thought about, when we made Fiva, we thought about having a dedicated hot wallet. We are users of Coinbase, and we realized that when you use Coinbase's wallet, you tend to have all of your Bitcoins there, or you have them offline on a piece of paper somewhere. And it's not really easy to get to them. And you don't want to be walking around with all of your Bitcoin if you use Coinbase and keep all of them there. So we thought, okay, we need a hot wallet that is your go-to, kind of like a debit card of the Bitcoin space. So we were trying to formulate this hot wallet that was really, really easy for my mom to use or my grandmother to use or whoever, and make it really easy for them to get into the game and be able to use something on a daily basis instead of like using your whole entire like Coinbase wallet for everything.
What's different about a hot wallet from a not hot wallet? What are the other options? if you're specifying this is a hot wallet.
This is a hot wallet. So what we were envisioning is that you don't keep a lot of Bitcoin in there ever. We're going to make it to where you can quickly get your Bitcoin out of there and put it into cold storage. Just say you get paid on the street or something. Say you trade with someone on the street and you don't want to keep all of them in that wallet. We're trying to keep the risk down as far as holding a lot of Bitcoin in that wallet. So it becomes more of a transactional wallet than it does a storage wallet. So that's what we would consider a hot wallet. It's more for just everyday, all the time transactions, which is what most people use their phone wallets for. We are just coming out and saying this is your dedicated hot wallet.
Yeah, think of it as checking as opposed to a savings account.
This is kind of a solution you're creating for yourself and for people who who aren't as technically savvy maybe, who are using things like Coinbase, which is a fairly secure web solution that should be fairly resistant to any sort of tampering. I'm wondering, there are options out in desktop wallet clients. Do you guys use any of those, or do you find them to be useful at all?
Yeah, I use the standard client, the Bitcoin QT client. I use that. I've used, Mycelium. I've used that. I've tried a lot of them. The thing is that I think the learning curve on those are a little steep for my mom. And so that's what we thought about when we were making it. We wanted to make it more of a consumer application, more about just loading it and being able to send quickly. The big part of those as well is that you still have to wrestle with those huge Bitcoin addresses. And I mean, I gave my mom some Bitcoin for Christmas, and the Bitcoin address is something that, it doesn't feel like it's great for her to deal with and have to mess with and maybe copy and paste and all of that. So we came up with what we call coin IDs to try to make that easier as well.
So let's talk about coin IDs for a second, because this is an idea that we've, I think, seen before. It's kind of like a DNS system, dynamic name system for Bitcoin addresses, where instead of having to remember that long alphanumeric capitals count, string. Instead, you just have to remember something that's human readable, and on the back end, that gets attached to your Bitcoin address. Is that what you're doing here?
Yeah, that's correct. When we thought about it, we were thinking about early Hotmail, Gmail, those type of things that made Gmail wasn't that early, but Hotmail, Yahoo, those things that made it easier for people to use email. So we were thinking if even within just our application, if we had these coin IDs to allow people to send Bitcoin to those coin IDs instead of an address, we kind of eliminate people having to have the address. Of course, right now we have to have the address because if you want to load, a lot of the wallets that people already use have QR code scanners and they only take addresses. But hopefully moving forward, the more people we get on, we can go ahead and open that up and allow more people to make coin IDs.
If I am not using your wallet, and you are using the wallet, can I still send to your name through that system, or would I need to install the client, load the FIVO wallet software onto mine in order to access that?
Right now, like I was saying, it's just like kind of being in AOL or something like that. You almost have to have our wallet, but we're going to open that up later on. We're just testing it to see if people like it. And because it's a hot wallet, it doesn't really bother anyone to just have a quick wallet. Like Let's Talk Bitcoin could have a wallet that you guys just download, and that's the one that people who have the FIVO wallet can quickly send you coins to. Hopefully that becomes a lot easier for people, so it makes it easier for you to just say, and if you have the FIVO wallet, send to Let's Talk Bitcoin on the FIVO wallet tips, so they don't have to come to your site and figure out what the addresses are and those things.
Right, no, absolutely, and that has been a huge problem for, not just for Let's Talk Bitcoin, but with Bitcoin addresses and non-visual formats in general. And even with video, it's still hard because most of the time the code on the video isn't selectable or anything. You just have to write it down real quick or pause it or something like that. So there hasn't really been, outside of QR codes, a good way to do this. And even with QR codes, you don't really know that it's going to the right person. You just know that it's going to whatever that QR code is telling it to go to. Talking about this Coin ID service for a second. So with the Coin ID thing, you said that, it's kind of a walled garden at the moment, just like the early AOL was. When you were on AOL in the beginning, you didn't, interface with other different walled gardens. That happened kind of at a later point. And I agree with you. I think that we're not really there yet. So there is room for these kind of closed and experimental ecosystems where you're trying to figure this stuff out. Are there any centralization issues through this mechanism that you've created for the names?
There are some centralization issues, but the thing is, if you have our wallet and you trust us anyway, it's kind of like AOL. I mean, it's like getting the emails. The Coin ID doesn't stop you from using your standard address. It doesn't stop you at all because in the wallet, you can still load to the address or to a QR code the same way you always know. It doesn't stop you from being able to use a regular address. It just adds a little piece of convenience for people who don't want to deal with that.
So it's a value add. And again, it sounds like you have a bigger plan here with what you're doing with these things.
Yep. Yeah, okay. We do. We want to make it decentralized later on. We're just trying to see if people want it first.
Right.
It's kind of the whole, I hate using lean startup, but yeah, like the lean startup method of just let's see if people want it, see if it makes it easier for people to use. Even within our testing, within the people that we've given the wallet to, we tend to not use addresses at all. We just type in like Leif or type in Lamar and then send in Bitcoin that way quickly.
So for people who are interested in trying this out right now, or let's say, we want to set up LTB as our donation address, is the wallet available? Can we start using this now?
So here's the thing. We have Love Will LLC, which is a company, and then we have the Cycle of Goodness Cooperative that will own a piece of Love Will LLC. And that's the other part of this whole thing. Like the FIVO Hot Wallet is just the first application of Love Will. It's basically Love Will works for the Cycle of Goodness. So when you come to the site, you can buy a membership to the Cycle of Goodness Cooperative. And with that membership, you get to basically personalize your Coin ID. And you also get access to all of the applications that Love Will creates. And with that, what happens is Love Will creates the applications for the Cycle of Goodness. And then the Cycle of Goodness goes out and markets Love Will's applications. So what happens is you get this cycle where Love Will is creating applications. The Cycle of Goodness is bringing in the marketing. So what happens is those people who are in the Cycle of Goodness grow larger and larger and larger, which allows the Cycle of Goodness to have what we call ad space, which is what, guys in media like yourself understand. So the more people we have in the Cycle of Goodness in that network, the more advertising space we have for advertisers. And then most of that, what we're going to do is most of that ad revenue will go directly back to the Cycle of Goodness. So let's say if a Overstock or Tiger Direct wants to advertise inside of the Cycle of Goodness, they'll come to Love Will, we'll place the ad, and then we'll give most of the money back to the people in the Cycle of Goodness. And if everybody knows how a cooperative works, everybody who's in the cooperative gets a piece of that ad revenue.
That sounds interesting, and it sounds pretty equitable, and it also sounds a little bit complicated. How did you come to this as a business model? How did that arise?
Well, there's philosophy behind it. Basically came from, number one, the fact that we always think about this whole 99 versus the 1%, and how a lot of times the 99 we're just like, we cry a lot because I'm not in the 1%. We talk about the inequality, and this is like giving the 99% a chance to add to the equality or bring the gap a little bit closer. So we came to it. We're like, okay, how can we do this? Because number one, in the same country where they allow the poorest people to be advertised the lottery, which is awful, right? That in that same country, in this very country, we can't advertise small businesses or early stage startups to those same poor people to allow them to get in early. And I think that is unjust. Like, I just really do think that that if you're not an accredited investor, that's the only way you can get a piece of a company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, that's completely unjust. So we said, okay, how can we do this? If we give back through a cooperative, what we can do is allow the people in the cooperative to benefit from all of the same early stage benefits and valuation that a corporation would get or a company would get in the early stages. So it was a whole, that's why we have the name Love Will, because it's just the whole thing of us being able to give back to the people that helped us get to where we are.
And we're going to have a Chrome extension as well, and that'll, for the most part, be free. And if you're part of the membership, the COG membership, then you can log in with the Chrome wallet as well and use your ID related to that.
Yeah, the Chrome extension you don't have to pay for, but you also don't get a clear coin ID. So if you use the Chrome extension, you'll get a suffix on the end like .phv. So it'll be like Adam.phv, and that'll be the Chrome extension. So you can go ahead and use it. I mean, our Chrome extension, it allows us to pay quickly. I don't know if you've seen the videos for that yet, but it allows you to pay quickly on sites like yours. Like if you wanted to leave tips on Coinbase and all of that, it finds the addresses on the page and fills the wallet. So it makes it real easy to roll around the internet. It's kind of like with CryptoKit as well. So
let's talk about that for a second. The wallet space has been a problem for years. This is really not a new problem. And yet you guys and CryptoKit, and there are a couple of others who are all sort of attacking these various usability problems. And it seems to all be happening right now. As someone who's kind of in the trenches on this, where do you think we're going to be as an ecosystem in 6 months or a year?
Well, I think that with adding things like the CryptoKit, which I like the CryptoKit a lot. I think adding things like that in our wallet, of course, it allows people to quickly transact. I'm not saying that's the only thing that Bitcoin should be used for, but I think if we want to gain a lot of new people, like my mom, like I said, if we want to gain a lot of these people out here who are not necessarily early adopters of technology, we have to make it extremely easy for them to come on to the system. That's another thing. Like right now, I'm not sure if there's any wallets that basically allow you to fill up when you get the wallet, but because you're getting the membership to the Cycle of Goodness Cooperative, what Love Will is going to do is once you pay the $10 for early membership, we're going to give you half of that back in Bitcoin into your wallet. So you'll have Bitcoin as soon as you start.
That sounds really interesting to me. You said this is going to be out next week. Will this be available? Will I be able to have?
Yeah, we'll get you one quick. We're working on all of that to make sure the memberships and the licenses and all of that go back and forth. But once we get that, we'll send it to you first to make sure you can secure your coin ID. But it'll be, that's it. But other than that, I mean, we have everything going, and we were going to secure you all one anyway. I mean, you guys have been very, very good for me as far as my education of it. That's another thing. We educate, we go around the state talking to people about it.
Yeah.
And we're just going to build more and more apps for the Cycle of Goodness. Right now, what you can do is you can go to fiva.com and register, put your email in, and when we get the cooperative site up and running, we will send you an email so that you can join early and secure your coin ID. Also, the Chrome extension is out right now. If you go to the Chrome store, you can go there and find the Fiva wallet, Fiva Hot Wallet Chrome extension, and use it immediately without having to buy a membership. It's free, but you don't get that wonderful custom coin ID. You'll have to add .phv onto the end of it, but you can get it right now.
And that's PHEEVA.com, right?
Yep, PHEEVA.com. It's fever. I got a fever and I can't let it go. What's his name? Christopher Walken. So it's fever. Fever.
Lamar Wilson and Leif Taylor, founders of Love Will LLC and Cycle of Goodness Cooperative. Thanks very much for your time.
Man, thank you very much, Adam.
This is Chris Joseph bringing you news on Next, the first true second-generation cryptocurrency for March 8th, 2014. It's been a busy week of new releases for Next. Wesley H's new web-based interface for the Next software has been included in the software distribution, and a new client, Next Freewriter, has been released. Several other Next clients, Nexus, Next Solaris, and Offspring, have also released new versions this week. Next is now also available for trade on Cryptsy, and in addition to that, it is supported by CoinReporting.com, Bitcoin Wisdom, and altcoinsmarket.info. Finally, now that Next is fully open source, we're looking to expand the Next development team. If you're a strong Java coder, have testing experience, or have a deep love of cryptographic algorithms, swing by the forums and let us know. For more general information on Next, head to nextcrypto.org or mynext.org. And stay tuned for more news on Next in the next Let's Talk Bitcoin broadcast.
So I'm here with Matt Corallo at the Bitcoin Miami conference, and you have the great distinction of being one of the chosen few who actually got a BIP passed in Bitcoin. Oh! So a BIP, for those who don't know, is essentially a Bitcoin improvement proposal.
Yeah.
And essentially it's the way in which programming changes to Bitcoin. Essentially, the changes to Bitcoin itself are made.
Not just Bitcoin. I mean, anything in the space of Bitcoin, whether it's directly in the protocol, which means Bitcoin D changes, or something much higher level. So just kind of in random wallets, maybe this is how they should do things, or this is a way to do things.
So can you explain a little more about what a BIP is then?
Yeah, so I mean, the process is modeled after the Python improvement proposals, which are a bit more technical, and those are generally fairly focused on specific things to change to the language, whereas Bitcoin's a bit more general. A lot of the BIPs are specific changes to the language, things like pay to script hash, which is a change to the scripting language in Bitcoin. Some of them are kind of in the middle, which is something that I did, which was the Bitcoin URI spec. So that's the Bitcoin links where you put an address and a link, and then it opens Bitcoin. And then there's some things that are way more away from the protocol, which is like wallet things, where, say, your wallet, how your wallet should store keys, how your wallet should manage transactions, which is far removed from the low-level Bitcoin protocol and more into the implementation of what other people are doing.
I just wanted, for my own edification, to understand how the heck changes in Bitcoin occur. Because, we talk about centralization in Bitcoin. We had that whole scare with Ghash and, all the other mining operations that come out there. Oh my God, they're getting a point to which they can affect the consensus.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to, I think, the most important thing when it comes to decentralizing Bitcoin, which is who can implement code changes into what we call Bitcoin, I don't feel like there's enough decentralization in it.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to know, lift the veil.
I agree. There should be as much decentralization as possible there. Yeah, at the end of the day, it takes time. It takes people to volunteer their time to look at these things and review them and make good, useful comments, and then decide when maybe it's ready to move forward on things. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people in Bitcoin and a lot of people doing really interesting things which are taking up all their time, so they don't necessarily have time to join a mailing list that has way too many posts to read them all.
So how many people are on the mailing list? When we're talking about how consensus is derived, it's derived by the voices in the mailing list.
Yeah, I mean, it's derived by the voices of anyone who's going to end up implementing the BIPs, which, because they're usually proposed on the mailing list by people, most of the client developers who are going to be implementing this are on the mailing list. At the end of the day, it becomes the people on the mailing list form the consensus around the BIPs, which are then implemented.
So can you explain the 2 BIPs that you were able to get through? What were they about?
Yeah, so I haven't done a BIP in a while, mostly because I haven't worked on Bitcoin as much recently. But I did the Bitcoin URI spec, which means at the time Luke had a proposal which had a lot of details that were kind of over the top and not necessarily worth implementing, that I thought, and a lot of people agreed. So I redid his BIP and suggested that it's basically simple, just Bitcoin : address, ? amount equals whatever. So a fairly simple proposal, which then got implemented, and now if you click on a Bitcoin link, it magically opens your client and it says, hey, do you want to send money to wherever? And that was kind of pushed through because it was seen as a great idea, and there wasn't too much discussion because it was kind of fairly simple.
So if I join the mailing list, I can have a voice in what's going on with Bitcoin?
Absolutely. And we encourage anyone who wants to have a voice to join the mailing list, anyone who's willing to spend the time to write well-reasoned arguments as to why they agree or disagree with something.
So where would I go in order to join the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal mailing list?
So most of the discussion happens just on the general Bitcoin development mailing list. That means Google Bitcoin development mailing list on SourceForge. I don't know the URL offhand because it's long and
no one in the past 5 years has made a tiny URL for it.
No, of course not. No.
No, it's not. That's way too hard, right?
No, yeah, of course.
Tiny URL / BIP improvements proposals.
Someone listening should do that and put it in the comments somewhere and post it everywhere.
Maybe we should put it on the mailing list and get consensus on it.
There we go. We should have a
BIP
about the tiny URL for mailing list URL.
I think that's really important and should totally take up everyone's time. When Congress started talking about baseball, I thought that was a perfect use of their time.
Oh, absolutely. No question. Especially with the huge amount of development resources that Bitcoin has today.
So if anyone wants to take on that as their crucible in the BIP forums, please do that.
Please do it.
There's one thing to be transparent and open, and there's another to be inclusive and accessible. And I feel like the BIP forums are transparent, but that they're not getting the word out. They're not proselytizing people to join them or making it easier, making the onboarding process easier for people to come on board.
Most of the developers, most of the people who are working on these things have very limited time and are working on 10 other projects and 5 projects in Bitcoin and probably have some Bitcoin startup or something. So there's not much time to do that. And at the same time, there's some kind of perverse incentive that the more people we have, the longer these things take to get pushed through because everyone always has an opinion. And you have to read all the opinions and eventually decide whether or not there's a consensus formed and make all the changes. So we encourage everyone who wants to write good opinions to come join. But I don't think there's really ever going to be some kind of outreach to get more.
Right. And I guess my problem with that, and Andreas Antonopoulos, who's on Let's Talk Bitcoin, always talks about the other $6.5 billion. And now if we're trying to make Bitcoin be the preeminent global apolitical currency, what we're really talking about is the other $6.5 billion. Yeah. And when we're deriving consensus from what hardcore cryptographers are doing on a mailing list, which are probably trending towards one type of space, there's kind of this unspoken cultural bias that just gets formed in what Bitcoin is, just because they don't have the same background.
Yes and no. I mean, the development mailing list has gone, in the past maybe 6 months, has grown a lot, and it's grown out of just developers, although it is still very primarily developers. There's a lot of BIPs and general Bitcoin improvement stuff is very generally self-serving in the sense that if someone has an idea for how to get a bunch of people in South Sudan into Bitcoin that requires some minor change, they're going to go write a BIP for it and submit it and say, I have this idea and I think this is what's required to make it happen, and they're going to make it happen. Which is something that's great about the Bitcoin community is there's so many people who have so many great ideas and are working so hard to make things happen. And I think it's open in the sense that anyone can submit, and thus the people who have good ideas and who need a BIP to make something happen will do it.
So how would I determine if I need a BIP to make something happen? Is that just I just put it out there, or?
There are guidelines for what defines a BIP, what kind of category it should be in. There's a few categories. And as to whether or not you need a BIP for something, generally the answer is you don't need one, except unless you want every wallet to include it or you want a major protocol change. But
unless you're trying to pass an amendment and you really don't need to try to modify the Constitution.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need one, but it is also a very good idea to do one if you're looking at, say, how should my wallet encrypt keys, or there's a recent one about how to encrypt keys for wallets. If you're trying to figure out a way to do that and you want other wallets to do it the same way so that things are interoperable, a BIP process is a good way to go through that and say, look, let's get some comments, let's get everyone together thinking about this problem and figure out how to do this the best way.
So if I wanted to get involved on a BIP, what would I do right now? I would go to I would just Google Bitcoin BIPs and I would submit one. What would be that process? Is there someone I contact? Or
the BIPs are now on GitHub. They were living on the wiki forever, but there's a BIPs GitHub that should be github.com/bitcoin/bips, I believe.
There you go. You got a URL.
That one's not bad.
That only took 5.5 years.
Yeah, a lot of discussion has moved there as well. But there's also always a lot of good discussion on the development mailing list. So the Bitcoin development mailing list is a good place to go to discuss BIPs and other things in Bitcoin.
And I think the thing to mention is that BIPs aren't just software. It's not just code.
Oh, no, most of the BIPs, in terms of change to just Bitcoin code stuff, a lot of the BIPs aren't that, especially kind of proposals for how Bitcoin things should happen, how wallets should function, how Bitcoin should work in terms of UI. And
it could be as meta as you'd like it to be. So if there's some evil human being out there who doesn't like the color orange, and they really think that they could make that case.
Ultimately, if you think nothing in Bitcoin should ever use the color orange, you can make a BIP for it. It'll probably get rejected and kind of laughed away pretty quickly. But hey, if you want to try, go for it.
Right.
We try to be as open as possible. Just get involved. I mean, hey, if you think you can help, if you have the time to think critically about things in Bitcoin,
well, you just lost like 2/3 of the internet.
Well, okay,
I mean, the critical thinking part alone. I don't know.
Critical thinking is hard. Time is also hard. If you do, for some strange reason, fall into these categories and want to get involved, absolutely.
So I actually have a BIP, my own little agenda, which is as it relates to the language of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I think it's really silly that 4 things or 3 things all have the word Bitcoin associated with it.
Yeah. There's no question.
Like in the Zeitgeist, it is the cryptocurrency field is called Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin blockchain is called Bitcoin.
Of course.
And the currency is called Bitcoin.
Oh yeah. No, I mean it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. When you explain it to a layman, they're like, "What? You have to explain. This is the Bitcoin I'm talking about now, and then this is the Bitcoin I'm talking about now, and then this is
the duplication of naming in Bitcoin is hilarious. You have the Coinbase, which is a transaction, and then you have a company called Coinbase, and then you have Bitcoin, which refers to 3 or 4 different things.
And then you have blockchain.info, which created the blockchain,
which apparently runs the blockchain.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a funny story about that. A paper by a very famous researcher, one of his first Bitcoin papers, I won't name names, was referred to the blockchain as an HTML dump that he was analyzing because it was an HTML thing and was analyzing the blockchain via HTML by a very famous cryptographer.
So there's a lot of confusion.
There's a lot of confusion.
Well, that's like when that RSA dude was like, yeah, Satoshi Nakamoto totally invested into Dread Pirate Roberts.
Oh yeah.
And he just didn't do any analysis whatsoever. He was just like, this is totally true.
What was it, like a month later? A few weeks later, someone was like, nah, that was me.
I don't know if I would have admitted that if I were him.
Yeah. There was some longer story to it. I don't quite remember. But anyway.
This discussion of language and this problem with Bitcoin and language and M-bits and N-bits and U-bits and whatever the heck we're going to be I really feel like this needs to be discussed and driven through consensus in the BIP format. How would I go about doing that?
Go on the GitHub BIPs site, look at some of the existing BIPs. There's BIP1 is the format for BIPs and how to format them and how to submit them and all this stuff. Sure. And it's generally just write up something for the mailing list, propose it on the mailing list, get some discussion, and then write it formally as a BIP and get it submitted to the GitHub after you have a lot of discussion and people agree kind of this is how it should function.
Right.
You'll generate a lot of discussion and it'll be months of work, but you'll get there.
Okay.
You'll get there.
All right. Well, I look forward to taking that cross on and seeing if I can make it work.
Hey, if you want to improve Bitcoin, that's a good way to do it.
Right. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make 2-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.
The BitGive Foundation is a non-profit charitable giving organization leveraging the power of the Bitcoin community to improve public health and the environment worldwide. Help us demonstrate the significant impact of Bitcoin in addressing these critical issues on a global scale. Support international giving in Bitcoin. Please visit our website at www.bitgive.com. www.bitgivefoundation.org. That's www.bitgivefoundation.org.
This is Stephanie Murphy for Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm here today talking with Michael W. Dean and Jeremy Rand. They are two people behind the project called Free Speech Me. Free Speech Me is something that I think is really going to change a lot. It's got a lot of potential here. I'll let them explain what it is. But first of all, gentlemen, welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thanks.
So tell me, what is Free Speech Me? What is the elevator pitch?
I'll give the exciting, this is going to change the world one. And then Jeremy can tell you the technical reasons of why it'll actually change the world, because everybody always says, my thing will change the world. First of all, there are several people who did the work behind this that Jeremy's standing on the shoulders of. He's connected with the Namecoin team. Namecoin is a decentralized cryptocurrency, kind of like Bitcoin. It's probably the only currency that's not a threat to Bitcoin. And people who are heavily invested in Bitcoin should know this. It's not a competition. It complements Bitcoin because it's barely a currency. The thing that would change the world and what people should be working at the most is commerce sites located anywhere that take Bitcoin only and run on Namecoin, that have their DNS served on Namecoin, because they can't be shut down and hacked, taken away by governments nearly as easily as .com or .whatever. So
for anybody who's totally unfamiliar with this, Namecoin is a spin-off of Bitcoin. It's an altcoin, and its main function is really not as a currency. It's as a distributed domain name system, or DNS system.
And until recently, it was difficult and unsecure to surf .bit domains. It's really easy to set them up, but it was hard to surf them and not secure. Jeremy's come up with this plugin called Free Speech Me that makes it really easy. So I'm going to let Jeremy take over from here.
Namecoin offers DNS that's decentralized and is difficult to censor, hijack, or surveil. It's an advantage over standard DNS. But when Namecoin was originally set up, and up until I got involved with it, there really wasn't a good, easy-to-use way that was still secure. There were some people who were changing their DNS settings on their computer to point to a DNS server that retrieved stuff from the blockchain, and that kind of defeats the security point of Namecoin's DNS, because then you still have all the security issues that someone can hijack your connection. If they're on your network, they can just change what you see from that DNS server. The DNS server you configure also has the ability to hijack your requests, send you whatever they want for whatever malicious purposes they want. So that's really not a secure way to use it. It defeats the point. There were some other methods of using .bit, which is the DNS system that Namecoin sets up. There were things like NM control, NMC socks, things like that. But in general, they were very difficult to set up, especially for novices. There really weren't many people using things like that. And when I was hanging around in the Namecoin IRC chat, it was very frequent to see people in there advising, oh yeah, you just use this DNS server, everything will be fine. And people didn't seem to be aware that this was a really insecure way of using it. And so I thought, Namecoin seems like a really good way of preventing censorship, improving security, improving privacy by some. Maybe we should be using it for that rather than just having it either security for the elite or insecurity for everyone else.
You've got a plugin here, the Free Speech Me plugin, that's going to allow people to easily view .bit domains without changing their DNS settings or doing any of this complicated sounding stuff that most people probably don't know how to do.
That's right.
Why would somebody want to view websites that are .bit websites? What's the advantage of having .bit domains that are not registered through a central registry like ICANN?
When you make a DNS request for a website or for any internet service for that matter, standard DNS is really, really insecure. It's also not private, and it can be easily censored. So when I want to access, google.com or something like that, any website, my computer has to send a request to a DNS server. Now, anyone who's on my network, as well as anyone who's on the DNS server's network and the DNS server themselves, they can see that my IP address went to google.com. And so that's a privacy issue. The DNS server, or anyone between me and the DNS server, can then either falsely say, oh, google.com doesn't exist, there's nothing here, or it can redirect me to a false website, which might be either a phishing site of some kind, or it might be a site that just installs malware on anyone who views it. It's generally not a secure system.
Can you tell me some examples of basically problems with the standard DNS system before? I know you got some on your Kickstarter page, but tell the listeners about that.
Well, Jeremy could give better examples of that. I know one is that recently Facebook was redirected to a fake Facebook site. It's one thing if they redirect it to a site that says, like, you've been pwned, owned, haha, you're an idiot, we took your website. That's bad. Worse is if it goes to a website that works exactly like your website, and you're like, oh, I'm on Facebook. Okay, well, I'll enter my password. Bam, they've got your password. Oh, I'll buy some little credits to play Angry Squirrels. Oh, bam, they've got your credit card number. So that's a big issue right there. Also, governments and corporations take down websites all the time without any due process. Like they say, oh, we saw the word, pirate on here. And it turns out you're like, Terran Lupo writing about stories about the days of old and pirates on the high seas. And they're like, they could be like, oh, this is a piracy site, and just take it. And when people go to it, it'll say, this has been seized by the, Department of Decency and Morality and good things that Obama likes and George Bush likes. Oh, so they do that. This can't be done nearly as easily with that. I don't want to say can't, because it's a challenge. Like you tell a safe cracker, this safe cannot be cracked, then they want to crack it. But
yeah, we're very careful to say it's resistant to some of these attacks. We don't say it's completely immune from them. There is a threat model, just like any other kind of security software. One of the other things that's interesting about Free Speech Me in particular is it doesn't just get DNS data from the Namecoin blockchain like most Namecoin software does. It also gets HTTPS fingerprints from the blockchain. And the reason why this is useful, if I want to visit a website that uses HTTPS, there's two main components in HTTPS. One of them is encryption, which is what most people are aware of. There's also authentication, verifying that the website you go to is the website that it should be. Mm-hmm. And HTTPS is often touted as the way to deal with hijacked DNS, because people will say, oh, well, if you're redirected to a false website, then the HTTPS will show an error, and so you'll be safe. Well, as it turns out, HTTPS is really not that hard to do bad things to, particularly if you're a large corporation or a decently sized government. And as an example
a decently funded, gang of criminals, like a mafia.
In July 2011, actually, which is quite recently, the HTTPS certificate authority DigiNotar was compromised. There were reports that the person who did it was affiliated with the Iranian government, although we don't really know. The attackers, whoever they were able to retrieve false certificates from this certificate authority that allowed them to securely impersonate the CIA, MI6, Facebook, Microsoft, Skype, Twitter, WordPress, Mozilla, hundreds of other targets. And what's really scary is DigiNotar didn't even notice that this had happened for over a month.
The CIA, think about that. They, like the CIA and the FBI, like the people who should be who claim they should be uncrackable. They were owned basically.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty big security breach.
Yeah. And there are some proposals that have been made to try to improve the HTTPS system. One of those proposals is something called perspective verification, popularized by Moxie Marlinspike, who wrote the Convergence plugin for Firefox. And what that tries to do is you choose some trusted third party, and every time you visit a HTTPS website, your browser takes the certificate from them and sends it to the third party, and basically that third party checks the website themselves and says, hey, do I see the same thing? And if it sees something different, then it can tell you, oh, you're being attacked. Don't trust this website. The problem is what happens if that trusted third party is also attacked. If something is being attacked on the server end, or the attack is widespread enough that it affects some of those trusted third parties, then you're no better off. Whereas what Free Speech Me does is it stores the fingerprints in the Namecoin blockchain, which is backed by proof of work since it's a blockchain. And so basically, to be able to feed false data into Free Speech Me, you would have to do a 51% attack on Namecoin, which we think is probably a lot harder than doing a man-in-the-middle attack on one or two of those trusted third parties, especially if those trusted third parties are well-known and are targets for someone who wants to attack stuff.
What Jeremy's done is kind of the difference between what Linux used to be like. I mean, GNU/Linux used to be like when it was mostly command line to when they got a GUI for it. And now it's almost like using Windows in ease. That's one thing. And the other thing is like, I'm approaching everybody I can about this, like all kinds of people, like tech people, liberty people, cryptocurrency people. And some people are getting it. There's some first adopters jumping on it, and some people have given money to our Indiegogo campaign, and it's great. And yesterday, a mind-blowing thing happened. A total stranger came out of the woods and said, this is going to change the world. I've got some Bitcoin. I want to buy ads for you, radio ads on Free Talk Live. And this guy worked it out with Free Talk Live. He bought 50 days of ads for Free Speech Me on Free Talk Live. They're reasonable, but that's not cheap. That's
I heard your ad tonight, and I was wondering how you got that. That's a cool story.
And he paid for it, 50 days on the radio show and on the podcast. So there's people like that. But then there's also people like, I'm not going to name any names, but I called one of the biggest tech blogs in the world, called him on the phone. I know him. I've known him. I've worked with them. They've been like paid me as editors before back in the day at book publishing stuff, and called him up and told him about it. They were like, oh, I don't know. That sounds interesting, but I have to go put up these pictures of squirrels in the snow with the new iPhone. And I'm like, you guys used to be cutting edge, man. What happened? And then like, I'm trying to call this other, I won't say any name, but it's a radio show that's huge. It's liberty oriented. And it's like, I know people at it, and it's something they would love and their listeners would love. And like, they're like, it's like trying to get the Pope to talk to a peasant, man. So really what this really, really needs is people to go check out freespeechme.org and look at it and realize that this is what's going to save the internet. And without this, your internet in 5 years, the way things are going, is going to be President Hillary's Facebook page is all you're going to be able to get to, or President Chris Christie's Facebook page. Like, that's all you're going to be able to view on the internet if everyone doesn't start adopting .bit, Namecoin DNS, and using Free Speech Me. And what Jeremy's planning on doing, you can go to the Indiegogo site or to freespeechme.org. He has a list of 30 or 40 improvements. We're not saying, we have this idea, give us money and we'll make this thing. We're saying, we have the thing. We have a beta. It works today. You can set up a .bit website for 10 cents and get your viewers to share this thing, and they will be able to build it and help with it and look at it. And Jeremy has plans to improve this to the point where it is going to become how the internet works. It's not just, we have a cool plugin. It's like, this could be the underlying foundation of Internet 4.0. So, Jeremy, go ahead and tell what some of those improvements are.
Obviously, one of the first things we want to do is make it a little bit cleaner looking in terms of just the user interface. Right now, for example, if you're on Windows, you'll see a couple of terminal windows pop up when we launch the Namecoin software from Firefox. And obviously, that's not user-friendly. It will scare some people. We want to fix that, and that's pretty easy. But yeah, there's lots of just simple user interface stuff like that, which we want to improve. There's also security-related things we want to improve. For example, right now, if you have an incomplete blockchain in Namecoin, Free Speech Me will use whatever data you have up to that point, which, it means lots of websites won't work, but more importantly, for me, at least from a security standpoint, whoever used to control a domain may have retained some level of control after they sell it to someone else while you're still updating the blockchain. And so that's kind of dangerous.
I want to interject two quick things right there. One is that when you install Free Speech Me, you have to wait 5 hours or so for the blockchain to download. It doesn't work until that happens. We've been getting tons of emails from people who are so excited to install it they don't read that. And they're like, I've had it in for 10 minutes. It's not working. So you got to wait 5 hours. The other thing is, currently, it won't play well with the Namecoin wallet. They won't hurt each other, but you can't use one while the other's open. Where Jeremy's going to fix that. It plays well with other wallets, with Bitcoin, with Litecoin. I tried it with Phoenix Coin. I'm afraid to even admit I have a Phoenix Coin wallet, but I got some as a joke. So let it download the 5 hours, and then it'll do it automatically in the background. And also, don't use it while running your Namecoin wallet.
Wait a minute. This is only for Firefox right now, but it works in Windows and Linux and maybe Mac. Is that right?
We've gotten some reports that it does not work on Mac.
Okay.
That doesn't surprise me that much because it hasn't been tested on Mac. And I think some of the code from Convergence, which is what Free Speech Me is based on, has not been tested on Mac either. So that doesn't surprise me a lot. Obviously, we'd like to make it work on Mac. And if we can't do that ourselves, we'll happily contract that out to someone who does Mac Firefox extension development.
Right. Like and that's why people should contribute to your Indiegogo campaign.
Yeah.
Right?
Jeremy's a full-time college student, computer sciences at the University of Oklahoma. So he's doing all of this around a more than full-time school load, although summer's coming up. So eventually.
Yeah, but this is great because, you've got here a working plugin that will enable people to easily view .bit domains. You've also got some marketing behind it, and you've got a campaign to let people know about it. And I think this is a great combination because not only is it a killer app, but it's also how to translate that to the not quite so nerdy among us out there that may not know how to use it, but they do know how to download a plugin, and then you can possibly save the internet from that.
Some other things we want to do are improvements for privacy. One of the things I didn't mention yet is one other feature Free Speech Me has, which is almost entirely new, is a .bit domain, which is what Namecoin uses for its DNS. A .bit domain can point to either a Tor hidden service or an I2P service, which are anonymously hosted websites. And we think this is really important because if you have a website which someone wants to take out, basically, then even though they can't seize your DNS, well, they can just, shut down the server and then your website goes down anyway. But if you host it anonymously using Tor or I2P, we're going to add Freenet as well in the future. You can have your .bit domain point to that, and that basically gives you anonymously hosted websites that have full DNS. The thing is, since Namecoin is blockchain-based, it has anonymity issues. So just like Bitcoin is not really anonymous, it's pseudonymous, Namecoin is also pseudonymous. And so we would like to make some improvements so that either people who are browsing websites using Free Speech Me or people who are hosting .bit domains using Tor or I2P so that they can have a little bit more anonymity rather than just pseudonymity. And some of that we can work on. Some of that might take collaborations with other people. But again, anything that we can't do, if we get enough money through Indiegogo, we will happily contract that out.
But there's a guy named John Gilmore, who's a computer scientist, who said something that's been quoted a lot. And it was, the net interprets censorship as damage and routes around it. That's absolutely true. But the weak point in that, the weak chain in that is DNS controlled through things like ICANN, which I call, it stands for something long and silly and computer related and, scientific, one of them book learning things. But, I say it stands for I can take your website because the government controls me. And they have similar things in other countries. And pretty much any dot whatever, if it's not .bit and it's not through the blockchain, pretty much any other domain name, your domain can be taken by a government agency or by a big corporation demanding a government do it with like a letter. I mean, they can write a letter. A lawyer can send an email, and some department of something can write, any 3-letter agency can write to ICANN, and they'll take it down, and there's no due process. They've stolen your property. And
they should call it ICANN has your website.
ICANN has your website. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I understand, and please go ahead if you have more.
I was just going to say, one of the things we're doing to promote this. We have a 3-minute video we made. It's up on YouTube. It's linked at freespeechme.org. I'm getting people to do language translations of it, to translate it text, and then also the same person or a different person read it and do a decent recording of it. And I'm going to make different language versions of this video because I really think we can't have a US centric view with a program like this. It has to be worldwide. So far we've got people working on that right now. I say that my job is I'm the Free Speech Me cat herder. That's my official job explanation. And I did a lot today of just going back and forth, people answering their question. What does this mean? What does this mean? And getting people to work on translations in French, German, Greek, Farsi, for Iran, Portuguese, Serbo-Croatian, Arabic, Turkish, Japanese, Spanish, and Catalan or Catalan, I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's a version of Spanish, or it's a variety of Spanish derivation that's actually kind of like a separatist language. So I think there's only like 7 million native speakers in the world, but I'm like, oh, it's people who are rebels. Yeah, we want it in that. And the guy who did the Spanish could do it too. So we need translators in any other language, but in particular, we're trying to get it in Korean, Russian, Ukrainian, Italian, and Chinese. So wow. If anyone speaks those languages, drop us a line, go to freespeechme.org, click on meet the team or contact. Our email address is at both places. We can't pay a lot for it right now because we haven't made a lot yet, but we'll pay one Namecoin for translating it and another Namecoin for recording it. And, I'll also give you a little bit of tech help in setting up Free Speech Me or especially a .bit domain. That's another thing we need is people to set up .bit versions of their .com or whatever and give it out to their users. And also set up, if you want, this is kind of cool. I actually set up a couple of .bit only domains. And one is it's a kitty cat picture site called .bitkittypics.bit. If you have Free Speech Me, yeah, because it's like the kitty cats drive the .com internet, and I figure they really should also drive the .bit internet.
That's how you know it's made it, right?
Yep.
What is the process for registering a .bit domain, and what do you do after you register a .bit domain? How do you host it, and how do you set it all up?
First, you need to obtain some Namecoins, which is a currency just like Bitcoin. You can obtain it at an exchange. Some people mine it if they have mining hardware. You could probably sell a product for Namecoin if you really wanted to, since it's technically a currency, although most people wouldn't do that. Once you've obtained some Namecoins, you need the Namecoin wallet software.
And how much Namecoin do you need?
To register one domain requires destroying one name set, so 0.01 Namecoins. And then you also have to pay around another half of a name cent as a transaction fee.
So just to give people an idea, right now the price of one Namecoin is about around $4 or about 6 millibits. So we're talking about 50 cents to register a domain.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit less than that. Yeah, it's cheap. It's cheap, yeah. So once you've done that and you've entered either the IP address or DNS name server address or whatever. And you can also enter an HTTPS fingerprint at this point in case you want to use HTTPS, which is actually secured by the blockchain. And once you do that, the Namecoin QT client will wait for 12 blocks while that first transaction gets confirmed. And it has to wait 12 blocks so that someone else can't see that you're registering a certain domain and then take it from you by paying a higher transaction fee, because that would obviously suck. So after this 12 blocks, it sends in another transaction which confirms that, yes, this is my name and I actually want it to point to this, and it points to that from then on. And after you've done that, you can either right-click on the name in Namecoin QT and hit update, and you can type in a new IP address or something like that. Or you can use a command line application if you want to script something. So if you want to automatically have it update with dynamic DNS or something, there's actually a tool that I've written which can do that for you. So programmers can have lots of fun making their names automatically update based on the outside world. And you have to issue at least one update every 36,000 blocks. Otherwise, your name will expire. And that's basically so that if someone loses their keys, to their wallet, eventually the domain will get released back into the world so someone else can use it, or the same user can get it again with a different wallet.
And right now, that's about every 8 months. When I first went on a bunch of months ago to check this out and register some domain names, freedomfiends.bit had been cyber squatted. And I don't know if it's been cyber
Freedom
squatted.
Feeds is your podcast, by the way.
Yeah, it's my radio show. And it had been taken. And unless somebody puts a note in the blockchain with their email address, or they point it to a site that says, contact me and give me $50,000, or contact me and I'll give this to you free because I'm your fan, there's no way to figure it out that I know of. But I just kept checking and looking at the blockchain counting down and just waited for it to expire and grabbed it like the minute it was available. And I did the same thing for Bad Quaker, Ben Stone's podcast, badquaker.com. I grabbed badquaker.bit. And the really cool thing is, now that we've been doing this, Jeremy and I have sort of turned into an unofficial ICANN, libertarian ICANN, or free market ICANN, because all these people that have been first adopters of this have seen what Jeremy's done and are so excited about it. They're contacting us and they're saying, hey, I have StefanMolyneux.bit. Would you like to offer it to him? And I'm like, yeah, send it to me. And I see he sends it to me, and then I have it, and then I contact Stefan and he doesn't get back to me. But when he does, I'll have it for him for free.
So if you have a .bit domain, how does the hosting work? You still have to have hosting for it, right?
There's a few answers to that. Right now, your web server either has to have a dedicated IP address, in which case there's no other configuration you have to do, or if it's not a dedicated IP address, you're going to have to make sure that there's a virtual host set up on that server so that it knows that when it gets a request for something .bit, that it points it to the same folder on the server that the .com is pointing to. Now, in the future, there's actually a proposal which I wrote, which I think will get implemented in the future, which would actually have the Free Speech Me plugin handle that conversion. So the way that would work is, in the future, you can register a .bit domain in Namecoin, and you can put a note in the blockchain that basically says, I want this .bit domain to point to a .com domain that already exists, but I don't want to have the server know that it's .bit. The server can think it's still .com. And Free Speech Me will just sort of magically change the HTTP headers so that it just works.
I didn't know
That's
about
not
that
implemented
one.
yet,
Awesome.
but that is planned.
And Jeremy, when Jeremy says I'm planning on implementing this, or that he's written this, it's not like some guy. He's actually. Are you on the Namecoin development team technically? I know that you've done some work with that and put some things that are being implemented, right?
Yeah. I don't know that there's one specific definition of a Namecoin development team, but I am on some of the internal mailing lists. So if that counts, then yeah.
Well, and you've also written some things that are probably going to be implemented in Namecoin, right?
Right. Several of the specifications that have been proposed for Namecoin, which either have been or will soon be implemented, were written or co-written by me.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. I think you've given people a pretty good overview of what they might need to set up a .bit domain if they're somebody who makes websites, or to register .bit domains and maybe give them to other people, or to install the Free Speech Me plugin. And I think we've painted a picture for people of why they might want to start using .bit domains and what the benefits might be of doing that. You've got an Indiegogo campaign going right now, and what you want, basically what you're asking for, is to raise some money to be able to improve the Free Speech Me plugin and implement some new features. And I have to say, your t-shirts are really cool. Like, if you donate to their Indiegogo campaign, you will get a t-shirt that says, I saved the internet and all I got was this lousy t-shirt.
Glad you like it.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to have to send you
If I can briefly elaborate on that.
Yes.
So the funds we're raising are not just for Free Speech Me itself. We're also looking to improve other related Namecoin software. For example, right now we're bundling the Namecoin D client, which is basically the command line version of Namecoin Qt. So there's lots of software that Free Speech Me relies on, and we want to make sure that that software gets improvements where it needs it as well. So about half of the things we've listed as things we want to do are for Free Speech Me itself. The other half are for related software, which basically has the same goals, but which Free Speech Me needs that software to work, and Free Speech Me benefits that software.
It's kind of one ecosystem. It's hard to explain as, most people think of a plugin like, well, you want to improve the plugin, but you want to improve some cryptocurrency? I don't get it. But the way I put it is that what's good for Namecoin is good for Free Speech Me, and what's good for Free Speech Me is good for Namecoin. And I'll stress this again. This isn't just, we have a plugin. Like somebody came out with a plugin a few years ago that was kind of neat. It was a Firefox add-in that had a continually updating list of blocked websites, and then you could go to the blocked websites through their DNS. But, the people doing it had to maintain it. It wasn't always accurate. They actually got like a threatening letter from the government for that. We haven't gotten anything like that yet, but we'll see. But that wasn't like this. That was just a trick. This is a whole new ecosystem of how to run the internet. It's very bold to say that, but it's true. If you're technical, go check out what Jeremy's got written down for what he wants to do, and you'll get it. And if you're not, install the plugin and you'll go, man, this is neat. I get it.
Yes. And go to freespeechme.org and you're going to find out not only about the plugin, but you can download it right now. It's available right now. It's not just something that they're going to build. You can also learn how to set up a .bit version of your website. They've got a tutorial there. They've got a video, which of course is being translated into different languages. And of course, they've got the Indiegogo campaign and some reasons why you might want to support this. So I really encourage everybody to go there. I think it's a really cool project, and I'd love to have you guys back on to see how it develops. And I think this is going to be really big. People can find you, of course, at freespeechme.org. But Jeremy, do you have a personal way that people can get in touch with you, Twitter or anything like that you want to give out?
I have a personal website, veclabs.net. That's veclabs.net. And that's basically for pretty much all of the programming projects I've done over the past few years. It's not updated very often. I'll warn you of that. But if people are curious what the Free Speech Me programmer does in his spare time, you can see some other stuff I've done.
He builds robots.
That is so cool. Somebody's going to scoop you up and hire you right out of college, I think.
I think they already have. Don't you have like a robot building summer job coming up or something?
I've had some robotics internships in the past. I don't know about this summer. We'll see how that goes.
Sweet. All right. So your website, Vec Labs, and Michael W. Dean is the host of the Freedom Fiends radio show and podcast. And people can find that at freedomfiends.bit, right?
.bit and .com. .bit if you have the Free Speech Me plugin, and .com if you don't.
Yeah, and Vec Labs is also available at .bit. Although for Vec Labs' .bit, you need HTTPS because I'm like that.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thanks for listening to episode 90 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's show was provided by Leif Taylor, Lamar Wilson, Jonathan Mohan, Matt Corallo, Stephanie Murphy, Michael W. Dean, Jeremy Rand, and Adam B. Levine. This episode was produced by Adam B. Levine with additional production by Stephanie Murphy and Jonathan Mohan. This episode was edited by Denise Levine, Matthew Zipkin, and Adam B. Levine. Music for today's episode was provided by Jared Rubens and General Fuzz. Any questions or comments? Email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. Have a good one, and I'll see you at ltbcoin.com.